Have you ever noticed how some people absolutely light up when they talk about travel? Like they're scrolling through flight deals at midnight, saving maps on their phone, counting down to their next trip like it's the only thing keeping them alive. And then there are the others, the ones who hear "let's plan a vacation" and feel something heavy drop in their stomach, the ones who'd honestly rather stay home, who doesn't dream about faraway places, who sees a passport and feels dread, not excitement. But here's the question. Why? Why do some people actually dislike traveling? Is it fear? Is it just laziness? Or is it something way deeper, something wired into how their brain works that says more about how they see the world than any Instagram travel post ever could? Stick with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might not only explain them, it might explain you. For some people, the answer starts with something that happened before. Picture this. You're younger, your family takes a trip. Maybe it's supposed to be fun, but something goes wrong. Maybe you got sick on the plane. Maybe you got lost in a crowded airport and felt that sharp, gut-level terror of being separated from everyone. Maybe the trip itself was fine, but the people you went with weren't. The fighting, the tension. That awful feeling of being trapped in a car or a hotel room with nowhere to escape. Now fast forward. Years later, someone suggests a trip and your body remembers before your brain even catches up. Your chest gets tight. You feel uneasy, you don't even know why. This is what psychologists call a conditioned response. Basically, your brain has learned to link travel with discomfort, with danger, with something going wrong. And once that connection gets made, it's incredibly hard to undo. It doesn't matter that the next trip might be completely different. Your nervous system doesn't care about logic, it just remembers the feeling. And here's the thing, this doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Your brain's entire job is to protect you, and if it learned that traveling equals pain, then avoiding travel becomes a survival strategy. You're not being difficult. You're not being boring, you're literally just listening to a part of yourself that's trying to keep you safe. Psychologists call this a trauma response, and it doesn't have to be some big, dramatic thing to be real. You don't need to have survived a plane crash. Sometimes all it takes is one bad experience at exactly the wrong age, and suddenly the idea of leaving your safe, familiar space feels like walking straight into a minefield. So if you've ever felt guilty for not wanting to travel, for not feeling that wanderlust everyone else seems obsessed with, maybe this is why. Maybe your brain is just doing exactly what it was designed to do. But then there's another group. These are the people who don't dislike travel because of what happened in the past. They dislike it because of what could happen next. Let me paint the picture for you. You're booking a flight. But instead of feeling excited, your mind immediately starts running simulations. What if the flight gets canceled? What if you lose your luggage? What if you get sick in a country where you don't speak the language? What if there's an emergency back home and you're too far away to help? One thought spirals into another, and another. And before you know it, you're not planning a vacation anymore, you're basically preparing for a disaster. This is called catastrophizing, and here's what people don't understand. It's not stupidity. It's not even really pessimism. It's your brain desperately trying to regain control in a situation where you have very little. Because let's be honest, traveling is unpredictable. You're in unfamiliar places, different rules, different languages, different everything. And for people whose brains crave structure, predictability, and control, that's genuinely terrifying. Psychologists have found that people high in what's called trait anxiety often really struggle with the unknown. Not because they're weak, but because their brains are literally wired to scan for danger. It's called hypervigilance, and honestly, it's exhausting. So when you're at home, you know where everything is, you know the nearest hospital, you know your routine, you know what to expect. But when you travel, all of that just disappears. And for someone whose entire sense of safety is tied to control, losing that control feels like free falling without a parachute. So they don't hate travel because they're boring or closed-minded. They hate it because it feels like handing over the wheel of their entire life to complete chaos, and their brains simply will not allow it. These are often the people who ask 1,000 questions before agreeing to any plan. What's the itinerary? Where exactly are we staying? What if this happens? What if that happens? They're not trying to ruin the fun. They're just trying to build a mental map so they don't feel completely powerless. And honestly, In an actual crisis, these are the people you want around. Because while everyone else is panicking, they've already mentally worked through 17 different backup plans. But there's a third group, and this one might actually surprise you. These are the people who don't like traveling, not because they're afraid, not because of past trauma, but because they genuinely just don't see the point. They're content at home. They've got routines they love, hobbies they're into, people they care about, a life that already feels full exactly as it is, and they don't need a plane ticket to feel alive. This is where we need to talk about something psychologists call defensive pessimism, but in this case, it's actually less about pessimism and more about simple preference. Some people are just wired to find meaning in depth, not breadth. They'd rather know one city really deeply than visit 30 cities on a surface level. They'd rather read about a place than physically stand in it. They find comfort, even genuine joy, in the familiar. And here's what's actually fascinating. Research shows that people high in something called sensory processing sensitivity, sometimes called highly sensitive people or HSPs, often feel totally overstimulated by travel. New sights, new sounds, new smells, constant change. For most people, that's exciting. For HSPs, it's completely overwhelming. Their nervous systems process everything more deeply, which means they get exhausted way faster. A day of sightseeing that energizes one person might absolutely drain another person by noon. So when they say, "I don't like traveling," what they might really be saying is, "I don't like how traveling makes me feel." And that's completely valid, because not everyone recharges the same way. Some people need adventure to feel alive, others need stillness. Some people find themselves by getting lost in a new country, others find themselves by staying exactly where they are. Neither is better, neither is more evolved or enlightened, they're just different. And the problem is, we live in a culture that absolutely glorifies travel, that treats it like some kind of moral good. Like if you're not constantly exploring new places, you're somehow less interesting, less curious, less alive. But that's just not true. You can be deeply curious and never leave your hometown. You can be wildly creative and absolutely hate airports. You can live a meaningful, rich, expansive life without ever getting a single stamp in your passport. Because the size of your world isn't measured in miles, it's measured in awareness, in presence, in how deeply you actually engage with wherever you are. So here's the psychological turn. Yes, avoiding travel can sometimes be limiting. If it's rooted in fear or unprocessed trauma, it might genuinely be worth exploring with a therapist. If it's anxiety-driven, learning some tools to manage that anxiety could open up possibilities you didn't even know you had. But if you simply don't enjoy traveling, that's not a flaw, that's a preference. And contrary to what the internet might try to tell you, you don't owe anyone an adventure. What's really interesting is this. People who don't like traveling are often some of the most grounded people you'll ever meet. They're not chasing the next high. They're not running from boredom. They've actually figured out how to be content exactly where they are. And in a world that's absolutely obsessed with more experiences, more countries, more stamps in the passport, that's actually kind of radical. They're the ones who know their neighbors' names, who have deep, long-term friendships, who have built a life that doesn't require an escape plan. They're not less adventurous. They just adventure differently. So let's bring it all together. If you don't like traveling, you probably fall into one of these three groups. Maybe you're group one, someone whose past experiences taught you that travel isn't safe. Your brain is protecting you based on what it learned to fear. And that's not weakness, that's literally survival. Maybe you're group two, someone whose need for control makes the unpredictability of travel feel unbearable. You're not boring, you're just wired to need structure. And honestly, you're probably the most reliable person in any room. Or maybe you're group three, someone who just genuinely prefers the life you already have. You're not afraid, you're not traumatized, you're just content. And that might actually be the rarest thing of all. The real question is, which one are you? And even more importantly, do you actually need to change? Because here's the truth. Self-awareness is way more valuable than a suitcase full of souvenirs. Knowing why you feel the way you feel, understanding your own mind, being honest about what you actually need to feel safe and whole, that's the real journey. And you don't need a boarding pass for that. So if this made you rethink what it means to dislike traveling, or maybe it helped you understand yourself or someone you know a little better, you're going to love what we explore next. We go deep into the kind of psychology that actually explains who you are, not who you think you should be. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, because the most interesting place you'll ever explore, it's the one between your ears. See you there.